That night, it rained. A cold, quiet rain fell over the Texas suburbs. Wind whispered through the bare branches, making the old roadside diner sign creak. A dim yellow light spilled from within. In that place, people wanted nothing more than a bowl of hot soup and a bit of peace at the end of a long day. The door flung open. 3 men stepped in, their wet shoes leaving dark prints on the floor. They were police officers, off duty, but you could tell by their confident eyes, loud voices, and the way they sized everyone up. Before they could even pick a seat, one of them stopped and squinted toward the back of the diner, then burst into laughter. "Hey, look over there. Is that Chuck Norris?" The laughter came sharp and cold. Another whistled. No joke, the action king himself, wiping tables with a ketchup-stained apron. Oh man, Walker, Texas Ranger switched careers to waiting tables now? Amid the mocking laughter, the old man kept Cruz's head down. No reaction, no glance up. He quietly wiped down the table, then walked back toward the counter, the dim light making his silver hair gleam. He was Chuck Norris. And yes, he was working as a server in a run-down roadside diner. But what they didn't know, behind the counter hung an old photo and a laminated lottery ticket, holding a story no one there was ready to hear. Rain still tapped on the window. Each drop crawled down the glass like time slipping backward into a forgotten place. Inside, the yellow light softened the air, falling gently over worn wooden tables and peeling walls. The silver-haired man, fit despite his age, was wiping down table 3. Not too fast, not too slow. Each motion was steady, careful, like he was wiping away something invisible. Maybe time. Maybe memory. His name was Chuck Norris. Elsewhere, that name might still carry legend, but here, in a quiet town on the edge of Texas, he was just the night shift waiter, always on time, hard-working, never complaining. He lived alone in a small wooden house a few blocks away. Nobody really knew where he came from or what he did before, and no one asked. People in this town didn't dig into your pa as long as you did your job well. Only one person knew, and she was the only reason he stayed. Elena. 3 years ago, Chuck was still a name in Hollywood. He hadn't made films in a while, but he was often invited as a guest of honor at events, did interviews, and appeared in commercials reminding people of his glory days. That day, a reboot scene of Walker, Texas Ranger was being filmed. A critical prop had been misdelivered. Just as panic spread across the crew, a small white truck pulled up at the set. A young woman stepped out, hair tied back, sun-kissed cheeks, bright eyes, backpack on her shoulders, carrying the carefully wrapped item. "Sorry, I'm 5 minutes late. Got stuck at the bridge." Her name was Elena, 23 years old, worked for a small logistics company. Not well paid, but she loved the job. It let her see the world. She didn't know who she was delivering to until Chuck stepped out from behind the camera. He smiled, nodded like he already knew she'd be surprised. Elena blinked, then chuckled awkwardly. "I used to watch your movies back in elementary school. My dad loved you. He made me take martial arts lessons, but I just liked to draw." Chuck smiled warmly. He signed the delivery receipt, thanked her, and wished her a good day. Neither of them knew that would be the last time she'd walk on healthy legs. A sudden downpour struck that evening. Slippery roads, poor visibility. Elena's car lost control at a curve barely a mile from the set. When police arrived, they found a man sitting on the cold, wet ground, clutching the bloodied body of the young woman. It was Chuck. Eleanor was rushed to the hospital. Spinal fracture, nerve damage. Doctors weren't sure if she'd walk again. The treatment was long and astronomically expensive. For a working-class family like hers, it was an unspoken sentence. The press said nothing. No scandal, no headlines like "Celebrity Saves Girl." Only one man, quietly vanished from every spotlight. Weeks later, a silver-haired man, Elena's father, applied for a job at Hector's diner. "I don't need money, I just need a job. I can do anything. Bus tables, wash dishes, mop floors. I'll do it all." Hector, a gruff, no-nonsense man, looked him up and down. "You used to be in movies, huh?" Chuck gave a small smile. "Yes, I used to." Hector nodded. He didn't ask for more. A man who's watched his daughter teeter between life and death has no time for curiosity. Time passed. Chuck worked hard, never missed a shift, never complained about night duty or cleaning toilets. When customers spilled coffee, he apologized with a smile, even when it wasn't his fault. The back room of the diner, where he napped after late shifts, became familiar to him. Elena slowly recovered. The treatments were grueling, but she never gave up. Every step she took with a walker was a victory. Though in pain, though exhausted, she always smiled. No one said a word, but every time Hector got a hospital bill, the amount owed was always minimal. He didn't ask, he knew. And from a cold, stoic father he grew quieter, gentler, especially when he saw Chuck. One evening, Elena returned from the hospital and saw Chuck wiping a table under the soft light. "Uncle Chuck, why are you working here?" Chuck looked up. Saw her, once paralyzed, now standing on her own legs. "Because I want to help you live well again." Elena said nothing, but after that night, whenever she had time, she helped him wipe tables, cook and brew coffee. They didn't talk much, but their glances told stories more than words ever could. Once, Hector and Chuck shared a beer after closing. Hector pulled out a lottery ticket, chuckling. "Back when I was young, I dreamed of winning big with this. Now it's just for laughs." Chuck looked at him and smiled. "You never know." They laughed. But a few days later, the ticket hit a small jackpot. Not massive, but enough to cover Elena's treatment completely. Hector was overwhelmed. He tried to wire the money immediately, but the next morning the account had already been paid in full, with a note, "For Elena, from someone who owed her." No name, no signature. When Hector asked, Chuck simply said, "Keep the ticket, as a memory. That ticket was mine, but the person who needed it was your family." From then on, the ticket was laminated and hung behind the counter. No one knew the full story behind it, except Hector, Elena, and the silver-haired man who quietly wiped tables every night. Until one rainy night, 3 men walked in, and everything hidden in silence was about to be revealed. The Texas night was thick with the scent of an incoming storm. The air grew heavier and thicker, like the oil cooling on the stovetop. Yellow light from the diner spilled into the rainy street, smearing across the window pane. Inside, things were as quiet as ever. The last customers of the day ate in silence. A young waitress sorted the final set of silverware. Chuck Norris stood behind the counter polishing a ceramic mug. He always cleaned the same one by hand every shift, like a ritual, almost like meditation. He always took the night shift. Fewer people, fewer stories, and if something were to happen, like that fateful night, he would know. The door swung open. A gust of cold wind swept in. 3 men entered, heavy coats, wet leather shoes, the swagger of those used to being given the right of way. Chuck looked up, then went back to wiping his mug. He knew the type. He had once been that type, or at least stood shoulder to shoulder with them in another life. But that life was far away now. One of the three, tall, buzz-cut, arrogant eyes, squinted and pointed toward the counter. Hey, is that Chuck Norris? Laughter followed, harsh, not just amused, satisfied even. Unbelievable. The kung fu legend turned dish boy? That's not a waiter. Look at the apron. That's a full-on dishwasher. They howled. Their voices echoed off the ceramic plates and tired walls. A middle-aged diner patron glanced over and quickly looked away, sympathetic but silent. Chuck said nothing. He placed the polished mug on the shelf, picked up another and stared into it, as if trying to see his reflection in its depths. The buzz-cut man walked closer. Hey, old man, don't think we didn't recognize you under that apron. I used to watch your movies. Now I don't know whether to pity you or laugh. Chuck remained silent. What happened, huh? Hollywood throws you out, no one wants you anymore. Had to take this crappy diner job just to stay afloat. Another man flipped through the menu and slapped it onto the table, tapping a finger. He waited. We're starving here. Come on, Texas Ranger, move it. They laughed again, the laughter of those who think they have the right. Chuck stepped forward and set 3 glasses of water before them. His hands were steady, but in his eyes there was a quiet weight, not fear, not shame, just familiarity. One of them propped a foot on the chair, lifted his glass, and deliberately dropped it. It shattered. Oops, slipped. Guess the glass was too slick. Chuck bent down and picked up the shards with his bare hands. A small streak of red appeared on his fingertip. Blood. But he said nothing. A young woman emerged quickly from the kitchen. Her brown eyes flared at the sight. Elena, the night manager. She walked up, her gaze sweeping across the men, calmly but firmly. Please be respectful if you'd like to eat or order. If not, kindly leave. The buzz-cut guy sneered. Who are you, the manager? Yes. Perfect. I want to complain about your staff. Doesn't smile, doesn't talk, doesn't serve right. Eleanor didn't flinch. Her voice was low but solid. He's not here to entertain anyone. If you come to eat, we'll serve you. If you came to humiliate someone, this is not the place. He stood up, his eyes sparked. One more word and it might turn into yelling. But suddenly, his eyes landed on a photo behind the counter. What's this? Who's that? Looks like a memorial picture or something. He reached out. Elena stepped forward, blocking him. Don't touch it. Easy, just curious. The photo lit up under the diner's soft glow. In it, a young woman with curly hair and bright eyes smiled beside an older man. Her arm was around his neck. In her hand, a laminated lottery ticket, taped across the frame like something sacred. The man exhaled. Your daughter. For the first time, Chuck spoke. Quietly. No. He placed a hand on the counter, eyes locked on the photo. Not my blood, but the only family I have left. Elena inhaled deeply and began to speak. A story she had held in her heart for 3 years. Now, like a dam finally giving way, she let it flow. Not for revenge, but to give truth to the one who deserved it. The woman in the photo is me. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident. My spine was severely injured. The doctors said there was almost no chance I'd walk again. My family was poor. My father cooked in this diner. He carried all the medical bills alone. The debt piled high, and then, somehow, every single bill, every cent, was paid. We didn't know who did it, not until my father passed away. In his belongings was a letter. It named the person who had paid everything and added a single line. That girl deserves a second chance. I owe her a life I accidentally ruined." She turned to Chuck. The silver-haired man gave a small nod, an acknowledgement, a quiet forgiveness of himself. Eleanor faced the three men again. Her voice softened but did not waver. "And that man, the one you just mocked, is the same man who spent 3 years here, every night, wiping tables not to redeem himself, but to keep a silent promise." The diner went completely silent. The buzz-cut officer sat back in his seat. No one said a word. The loud swagger with which they'd entered was now replaced by silence, lowered gazes, and slow, uneasy breaths. Chuck stood still, hands clasped. He didn't look like the larger-than-life figure from his old films anymore. He looked real, weathered, strong in a quieter, more permanent way. Eleanor stepped forward, pulling a small item from her pocket, laminated, slightly yellowed with age. "This is the ticket he and my father bought as a joke, but it actually won, and he gave it all to us, every cent. He didn't keep a dime. I hung it here not to boast, but to remind myself, some people don't need fame. They just need someone to stay." Part 4. The Hero's Daughter. No one in the diner spoke. After Elena's story, the air felt taut with an invisible string, one made of shame, understanding, and something harder to put into words. The three officers no longer looked arrogant. The buzz-cut, the one who laughed loudest, now stared at his hands. Slowly, his eyes drifted to Chuck, as if truly seeing the man behind the weathered apron for the first time. Chuck remained where he was. The overhead light cast deep lines across his face, lines carved not just by age, but by guilt and perseverance. He didn't look like a hero, he looked like someone who had endured. Finally, Chuck spoke. His voice was gravelly and soft. "I never told anyone, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't think I deserved to be remembered." Eleanor looked up at him. "You saved me. I was the reason you were hurt. That accident happened because I rushed a delivery. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have been in that hospital. You stayed for 3 years, paid my bills, took my father's place, not for thanks, not for forgiveness. And you still think that's not worth remembering?" She paused, her voice trembling. "I remember. The first night I took a step using my walker. My legs were burning, my arms shaking. I cried. And you, the night shift waiter, stood just outside the rehab room, holding a warm glass of milk, without a word. I knew you were always there." Chuck bit down gently on his bottom lip, holding back emotion. "You didn't need to say anything, you just wanted to help." She stepped closer, standing in front of him, her eyes shining but not weak, eyes that had known pain, loss, and growth. "But I want to say it, because there's never been a better time than now." She took a deep breath. I don't have any family left. My mum died early, Dad's gone too. But I haven't felt alone in a long time, because I've always had someone here, someone who loved me, protected me, without needing a reason. I just never said it aloud. A tear rolled down. "I've always seen you as my father." The entire diner froze. Chuck didn't move. 1 beat, 2, his body stiffened like stone. The towel in his hand trembled. Then, slowly, he set it down. He looked up at the girl in front of him, the woman she'd become. He reached out, those once mighty hands now tentative, and placed them gently on her shoulders. "I'm not your real father. You don't have to be. Love isn't measured in blood, It's measured by who stays when everyone else leaves. Eleanor embraced him. It wasn't a grand cinematic hug. It was quiet, warm, full of things unspoken. The other patrons remained silent. One elderly woman dabbed her eyes. The buzz-cut cop bowed his head, exhaling slowly. A few weeks after that rainy night, the townspeople noticed a new sign on the front of the diner, Eleanor's Place, in honor of Hector and Chuck. Below it, in smaller letters, "Home isn't where you're born, it's where someone stays for you." Eleanor had taken over as the official owner. She redecorated, added soft lighting and fresh paint, but kept the old photo hanging behind the counter. The one of her and Chuck, with the lottery ticket carefully displayed in the corner. The frame was larger now, and underneath it, in Eleanor's handwriting, "My first step." Because he stood behind me. Chuck still worked at the diner, but now he wasn't the old man wiping tables. Kids who came in for dinner with their families called him Papa Chuck. Some regulars stopped by just to shake his hand, not because he was a former star, but because he had quietly raised a stranger into a woman of strength. And then one day, a letter arrived. It was from an old director. They were making a new film, not an action blockbuster, but a quiet drama. They wanted Chuck to play a supporting role. No fight scenes, no guns. Just a father figure, silent, steady, supporting a young woman chasing her dream. Chuck said no at first. Then, a week later, he called back. "I'll do it, if the character is based on a real person, a girl who once painted her dreams, and a man who thought he'd lost everything until he realized the only thing that matters is what stays." They agreed, and Chuck stepped in front of the camera one last time. But now he wasn't there to play a legend. He was there to honor a promise. Epilogue. A human lesson. Voiceover. Slow, warm, steady. Not everyone is born to be a hero, but anyone can become part of someone else's story. You don't need a spotlight. You don't need an audience. You just need a heart big enough and someone who needs you to stay. There are mistakes that can't be erased, but there are journeys, quiet, slow, redemptive, that can change a life forever. And sometimes that journey is what makes you great.